Hey guys, it's Enigma Hood. Now, I want to talk about anti-racism laws. I had a friend, I think he was from Switzerland? Either that or Sweden, I'm sorry. I always get those two countries mixed up. You know, typical American, right? Anyway, doesn't really matter. The point is that in one of these countries, they have very strict anti-racism laws. You can't say anything racist about racial minorities. However, this law applies only to racial minorities and not to the majority. With that said, should we have anti-racism laws in America? That's the question. I also want to point out that in Austria and in Germany, they also have at least anti-Semitic laws. I don't know if they have anti-racism laws that applies to other minorities like blacks or people from South Asia or whatever. But certainly they do have anti-Semitic laws. You can't say anything discriminatory about Jews. You can't deny the Holocaust in Austria. A few years ago, some guy, he was a British guy that was living in Austria. I don't know what the hell he was doing living there. But he was a Holocaust denier and was publishing various materials which he cited as evidence that the Holocaust didn't happen. And they threw his ass in prison. So, they don't fuck around over there. Ever since the Holocaust, they have been very apologetic about what happened and their contribution to that. Now, the question is, should we have those kinds of laws in America? Well, this is exactly why historical context matters. It makes sense for those kinds of laws to be in place in countries where they committed total genocide against certain groups. And, looking back on it, they realized just how horrific and wrong they were. Does that make sense in America, though? Well, the historical context in America, actually, is that Americans did commit genocide. But they committed it against the Native Americans. And America has been quite a bit less apologetic for what they have done against the Native Americans. And certainly they have done very little to make reparations to the Native Americans because they want their country and they want their power. And I guess, as a man who loves and covets power as well, myself, I can understand that. I mean, most individuals are like this as well. It's just we don't like to admit it, but Enigma Hood is an honest man, so I will admit that. Certainly. But I want to get back onto the topic of what I was talking about. Anti-racism laws. Should we have them in America? Is the issue here. Well, I can approach this as objectively as possible. And I have to say that it is inherently a subjective matter. Because anti-racism laws, as far as I'm concerned, benefit the minority, primarily. So you will notice that if we're talking about anti-racism laws in America, most whites, because they're part of the majority, would oppose these laws. Now, once I was watching an episode of The Atheist Experience with Matt Dillahunty, he was a white guy, and he was talking about how they have different laws in different countries. And he made a remark that he thought that anti-racism laws were like thought police. I found that remark to be a platitude. A better way of putting it is this. A white person has very, very little to gain from anti-racism laws in countries where whites are the majority. Think about it. You're basically restricting your own freedom. You're restricting what you can say. And you're allowing for the possibility that you can get in trouble for what you say. To prevent hate speech against certain protected groups. And one of these protected groups might not be white people. So if you're a white person, why on earth would you be in favor for this? All you're doing is restricting your freedom. It's a point of view issue. As a racial minority, however, a little bit of your freedom is being taken away for a lot of protection. A huge amount of protection. That's why a racial minority such as myself would always be in favor for anti-racism laws, because I stand to benefit tremendously from it when I am part of the minority. But the opposite happens when I go back to Sri Lanka, for example, and I'm Sinhalese, and over there, the majority is Sinhalese. So anti-racism laws wouldn't protect me anymore. It would protect the minority, which would be Tamils and Moors and a few other ethnic groups as well. It would protect them. So it's always an issue of who are you protecting? We are protecting the minority. We're taking away a little bit of freedom from the minority to afford them a lot of protection. Whereas from the majority, we are taking a little bit of freedom, or maybe depending on who they are. I mean, if they are racist, then you're taking away a lot of their freedom to give them zero protection. They have really nothing to gain, as far as I'm concerned, from anti-racism laws. So that's my take on it. Should we have anti-racism laws in America? It depends on who you are. If you're a minority, it makes sense to be in favor for it. If you're part of the majority, if you're white, probably not. And if I were white, I probably wouldn't be in favor for them because I wouldn't be. It doesn't really help me that much. Most whites that would be in favor for it, I think, are either people that have very close minority friends, like wives or close friends, related people, relations, or whites that have very strong empathetic emotions to the point of where they are able to empathize with a minority and say, you know what, if I were in your position, I would be in favor for this, so this is right, we should do this. That's the reality of the situation. Thought police and stuff like that, he's getting that from that novel by George Orwell. As far as I'm concerned, it is just a platitude. What you really mean is that as a white person, you don't gain a lot from anti-racism laws. That's it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments section. How you feel about anti-racism laws in, like, Germany, for example. Are they necessary in Germany? Does historical context matter? Stuff like that. This is Enigma Hood signing off.